or another use by such third parties. Therefore, by entering the council chamber and using the seating area, you are consented to being filmed and the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. Welcome to the Community Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday the 4th of March. My name is Councillor Lucas. I'll be chairing tonight's meeting, and I also have my Vice Chair, Councillor Lee. To my left, Mandy Thompson, Service Director for Technical Service, Caroline Wiggins, Directorate Specialist, Terry Fisher, the Chief Inspector. We have Laura Kerman from Democratic Services and Steve Mitchell, our webcaster. A supplementary agenda was issued for the meeting. I propose to take the minutes of the meeting after the declarations of interest and the presentation from the Chief Inspector Terry Fisher after the work programme. Apologies for absence.
Apologies have been received from Mr Wim Marshall and Councillors Sharif and Yarrell.
Thank you. Substitute members?
We have Councillor Janet Whitehouse substituting for Councillor Sharif tonight.
Thank you. Declarations of interest? None. Thank you. From our supplementary agenda, item 7, pages 2 to 47, are the minutes of our last meeting. Can members please confirm these? Councillor Dadd.
Sorry, can I ask a question? On page 6, at the last meeting, I made specific suggestions on wording on the policy relating to temporary accommodation, and I note that the amendments have been decided as appropriate, but I think it would be useful if the committee did see that, because they didn't see all the written ones that I put forward.
The policy has gone through, has been amended and will go to Cabinet, or has been to Cabinet for approval, so the final policy can be seen. Is that satisfactory, Councillor Dadd?
Thank you. With that comment, can we please agree the minutes from the last meeting? Thank you. We have our work programme on pages 3 and 4. So you'll note that we're now at our final planned meeting of our 2024-2025. Do we have any comments? Thank you. Okay, so next, as detailed on the supplementary agenda, item 8, we are going to receive a presentation from the District Commander for Epping Forest and Brentwood. Oh, we have the Chief Inspector Terry Fisher to present this to us. Thank you.
I don't mind, it's fine, you can refer to it to wish. Good evening, everyone. Nice to see so many people, and for those that don't know me, yes, I am Chief Inspector Terry Fisher from Essex Police and your new District Commander for Epping. Give me a moment, and I'm just going to bring up a PowerPoint, and I can assure you I'm going to try my best not to present death by PowerPoint to you. It's more about me obviously speaking and listening to you as well, but I thought it would be good to highlight not only a brief introduction about myself, and why I'm happy of being posted here, but secondly what we've been up to really in the last 6 months. So look, I've been with Essex Police for 20 years, and on this recent promotion very happy to be coming back to Epping Forest. I know I've had the pleasure of speaking to some of you, but for those that I haven't, 10 years of my career has been spent in Epping Forest. I've policed at Epping Police Station when it was still there, Waltham Abbey Police Station when it was there. I've worked on the community policing teams there. I've been a sergeant and an inspector for half my career in this area. So coming back here and being able to use some of the expertise and understanding some of the really challenging demographics of the area, the positives as well of what we've got to work with, and the really good men and women that police this district of approximately 155 square miles, really. It's, I'm very, very pleased with where I'm at, and hopefully, by virtue of how I'm performing, you'll be thinking the same as we move forward. Next slide, please. So the reason why I wanted to give you an overview of what we've been doing and what the plans are moving forward, but to take on board as well some of your own views and concerns. In the last 5 months since I've been in post, I've spoken to a number of members of the public, some councillors I have spoken to, the local MP as well, and it's trying to understand where we are and what we want to be doing moving forwards. So for our performance, look, ultimately, crime is down in Epping. It's down by 4.3%. There are a vast amount of statistics I could pass at you, but again, I think it's probably more prevalent to focus on the most relevant to really some of the community concerns. Antisocial behaviour is falling across Essex. Epping is no exception. We're down 9.7%. You'll see there reductions further to violent offences, robbery, and even residential burglary, which fortunately for us does break the trend nationally. We saw a really big spike for that, particularly over the last 2 years, and we're seeing that coming down.
Can I just clarify, do you mean Epping or Epping Forest when you're giving the figures?
So when I say Epping Forest, Essex Police will refer to Epping Forest districts.
So that's Epping Forest.
So that means the entirety of the district. So that includes Buckhurst-Hill, Loughton,
Yeah, I know,
Chickwell.
but it says Epping, so I'm just clarifying. For the
No,
town.
apologies if that's not clear, but yes, when that says Epping in there, that very much means the district. Yeah, it's referred to, so apologies. Simply put, look, we are solving more crime, we're making more arrests. Now, does that mean it's an entirely positive picture? Of course not, but there are some really good successes to celebrate of where we are and where we currently are at with policing and crime inside of the district. Next slide, please. So, as far as also looking at what we're doing from a community police perspective, and particularly around engagement, policing in general, I think it's fair to say, for the last few years, has had some unique challenges nationally. There's a crisis of confidence, and very much so that all forces across the country are really striving to ensure that we're increasing public confidence. Without the public trust that we serve, we're not going to be able to do our job effectively. In Essex, 77% of people in Essex think that we do a good or excellent job from surveys we've done recently, and that's obviously from the PFCC's office. When we look at Epping Forest, though, particularly as I'll move and show you at the moment, the main cause of concern in Epping is a lot of our communities feel like they don't know what we're doing. They don't know the work and some of the things that I'm mentioning now and speaking to you about in these stories. They don't feel well informed. And so it's looking at how we can improve that. Informed on things such as the town centre team and their work over the last 6 months on retail crime. There's been a very large increase in retail crime nationally. The cost of living crisis that occurred in the last few years, you would have no doubt seen publicised on national media. Epping is no exception to this. We saw at one point when I arrived, there was over a 70% increase in retail crime offences that were occurring in Epping Forest. To that end, the town centre team created what's called Operation Marilyn, and that gave a very unique approach of using both covert and overt tactics to target offenders, better liaison and linking in with shopkeepers. There's a monthly meeting that takes place with retailers on the Retail Crime Forum where we meet with businesses. We don't just want to tell them how we're performing. We want them to feel confident in reporting crimes to us. But more importantly, we want to kind of empower them. We want them to know how to capture best evidence, when to call the police, what to report to us. And by doing that and using some of their technology with very large companies like BP and the M&S franchises, Boots, Morrisons, etc., they also have their own technology systems that we've been able to use to great success to identify, arrest and capture people. We've tripled our arrest rate and we have one of the highest solved rates for retail crime in Essex. What does solve mean? It means we're holding more people to account, we're arresting more people and we're putting them in front of the courts where needed. So it's some really good work there. Also things like Operation District, which is an increase. By no coincidence you'll see from statistics that I have that knife crime is down in Epping. My CPT or community policing team have carried out some work inside the colleges, speaking to students, educating them over the risks of knives, but we also wanted to ensure that we bring them on board with our efforts to remove knives from the streets of Epping and Loughton. The operation itself sees youth go out, knocking on doors, engaging with people, highlighting the changes in legislation which occurred in the last 18 months with new prohibited weapons coming in, bladed points, samurai swords as an example, machetes. As a result of that operation, and since it's been running, 688 knives have been taken by those students and police officers and destroyed. And those are off the streets of Epping Forest and keeping our district safer. Probably falling well in line with that, we've got a renewed approach to us targeting drug dealing and drug abuse. At any community forum that I've been to, continue that is a concern that comes up. Drug dealers, drug dealing, people smoking, using drugs, and the fear that comes with that. And people obviously mention at times there could be gangs doing X or Y, whatever it might be. The mission very much from the community policing team, not just now, but for the next 12 months, you will see on a very regular basis for our comms that go out. And if I speak to any of you, we will be carrying out warrants, we'll be arresting drug dealers. There will be a zero tolerance approach to any kind of activity in respect to drug dealing taking place in Epping. and some really good work already ongoing. At the moment, we're averaging about 2 warrants every month that's going on, so some really good work there as well. Look, finally, we continue our work with some youth engagement going into schools and educating the youths around some of the challenges around crime and re-education. We do that with support not only from local other agencies and authorities, but we've got a really good, strong working partnership with the council here. I've come from Thurrock, and I was the district commander for Thurrock for quite a period of time. For a period of time that through national news you might have seen that council had some significant challenges, but still we had a really strong partnership work there in respect of how we kept Thurrock safe. And I've come over to here, seen what's going on already. I'm really impressed, and I'm really looking to, I don't think it's a matter of improving, it's continuing the strong partnership that we have here with the Community Safety Partnership. And as well as that, my mission really as the District Commander is to forge relationships with the likes of yourselves, elected representatives, and of course our local MP, to ensure that I'm educated as to what the problems are, and so we can target them better and keep our communities happy. Next slide, please. So, I've mentioned engagement and some of the challenges that we had there. When I landed here in September, again, I kept hearing the same thing of that, and the statistics and surveys that I've sent out showed the same. People feel less informed about what is going on in Epping, and I took it upon myself to look at the way in which we was engaging with our communities. To put it, I suppose, in summary, over many documents that I've seen, we're changing the way we're engaging with the communities in Epping. Previously, you would have seen things from Essex Police like Coffee with Cops, or we go to a local library and, you know, come along and meet us. You'd see social media stories being put out on Facebook or X. The organisation recognises that, you know, we're trying to reach target demographics of the youth generation. They're not on Facebook, they're on TikTok. So, for example, Essex Police, and I promise you you're not going to see any dances from me, but we are on TikTok. We are putting out stories there. We are transferring onto other platforms to try and engage better. But it's also the face-to-face meetings. One of the more harder to reach demographics for us, 55-plus bracket. They felt less informed around what police were doing, and that we understood the problems and concerns that they were facing with. We're going to places now such as we're going to supermarkets, and we're setting up really at peak times. We're going to gyms, office buildings. We're going to market days. My community engagement and safety officers are going into schools, not just speak to the kids, but we're going to stay outside and we want to speak to the parents doing the school run. We're trying to be a bit more innovative to ensure that people feel like they can, A, come and speak to us, but we're reaching more people to understand what are the issues that you feel are affecting you and where you live. We also know that a lot of our demographic works inside of the London, where the Metropolitan Police will carry out their business. Believe you me, there's a lot of people that will still think the Metropolitan Police cover this area, particularly if they've had no involvement with the police. I take pleasure in rectifying that and saying that, you know, I'm proud to work for Essex Police, and when they come back home from their train journeys, we'll be there outside the train station at times, speaking to individuals. And again, welcome back to Epping. This is what's happening in your district, but more importantly, what do you think is going on and what are the things that are concerning you? So we're trying to invigorate what we're doing. It certainly is still a work in progress. We've made some good strides with our engagement stats, but again, it's meetings like this, and hopefully I'll have a chance to speak to you after the meeting as well, or as we move forward, to understand from you what are the problems that you feel that your constituents are having. I want to know about it, and how we can improve as well. Believe me, I really do. Next slide, please. So, and that's probably to back up where I started, what our engagement stats look like and where we are. Yes, I know there's a lot of stats there and numbers, but I suppose to put that into confidence, policing confidence is still up in Epping, and that falls very much in line with what I said around that figure of 77% of people in Essex feel that we do a good or excellent job. But there are some staggering statistics on there that cause me concern. The fear, despite the fact that antisocial behaviour is down, the fear of ASB is very much still there. People thinking that Essex Police are dealing with crime and ASB correctly, again, 37%. We can go through and you look at those, but again, one of the most significant that I feel is that people don't feel informed about what we're doing, which very much falls in line with trying to change the way in which we engage with the residents and communities of Epping. Next slide, please. So the commitment is, and the mission statement is that we'll, exactly these points here, this forms part of what I've called an engagement improvement plan that I've written, and my community policing team, inspector and their team, running by this every single month where I meet with them and they report back to me. But we'll continue to build trust and confidence. We're going to be innovative in our approach to how we do it, and more importantly, we're going to continue to promote youth engagement and education. So those are kind of the key aspects linked in with all that I've been speaking about for the last couple of moments. Next slide, please. I hope you would have seen this, but again, this probably aligns now moving on to where we're moving forwards into 2025 and 2026. The Chief Constable's plan is there, it's published, it's very much in line with what our PFCC has set out through the objectives and aims for policing in Essex as we move forward into the next few years. Our plan, very simply, it's helping people, keeping people safe and catching criminals. And, you know, the Chief always puts it that way because it needs to be simple. And policing, it can be very complex, but when we're talking about helping people, locking people up, it really is as simple as that. You'll see on there what our main areas of focus are, which are 4 Vs, and I'm not going to go through them, folks, because I'm mindful we'll be here for some time, and I promised you I wasn't going to give you death by PowerPoint, but the priorities on there, they remain unchanged as to what Essex Police will be focusing on for the next year moving forwards. However, how do these link into what we're doing at Epping? Next slide, please. So we have policing priorities for Epping, and we have community priorities for Epping. From looking at the crime statistics, from speaking to individuals at PFCC meetings, like yourselves, our local MP, and listening to the communities, if we look at what our policing priorities should be, and as the District Commander for Epping, they are drug dealing, violence and high harm crime. High harm crime, ladies and gentlemen, includes burglaries and sexual offences and violence of injury, as well as weapon-related offences. Violence against women and girls, which of course encompasses domestic abuse, and we will continue to work on and we will reduce retail crime that's occurring in the district. Next slide, please. However, as much as we have policing priorities, it's important to understand that, again, as much as the issues we're speaking about there seem very serious, and of course they are, it's not always the serious crime that can have the most impact. And we understand that communities have concerns over matters that they feel are just important and they need attention. Our community policing team in the next few months will be rebranded to fall in line with the national model as neighbourhood policing teams. And our community priorities, which will be focused on by our neighbourhood policing teams, are there for you to see. And they are vehicle crime. Vehicle crime is reducing in Epping, but it needs to come down further. We know how much concern it causes people, particularly with the spike that we saw nationally in the last 2 years of vehicle thefts and keyless thefts of Jaguars and Range Rovers in particular, as well as Fords. It is coming down. The data shows that, not just through Essex, but nationally, and Epping is no exception there as well. On-road vehicle antisocial behaviour, car cruising. It comes up and has come up time and time again. Some of you may already be aware of this from maybe speaking to some of your constituents, but communities are concerned about vehicles driving dangerously and car cruising per se, or car meets as they're called. Coming from Thurrock, I can stress that the car meets that we had there, which ranged at any points up to about 5,000 vehicles, and some of the meets we had there, we had some really good work to reduce that, and I'm looking to replicate that here. The model that I created and pioneered in Thurrock, we will be replicating here, and that was called Operation Irish Lions, which was my operation that I ran in Thurrock for 3 years. I won't bore you with the intricacies of the details, nor can I, because it's operational policing, but just be assured, on a one-to-one basis, I can speak to you about that if that's something you have concerns over, but very much it's a mission statement for your neighbourhood policing team. We'll be targeting this. We'll continue our reduction on burglaries and operations. We will drive down antisocial behaviour. Yes, antisocial behaviour is down, but we need to make sure it stays down, and that will happen with continued efforts for our community policing. Visibility, road safety, and of course, partnership working, which I've obviously championed already, but it's something that I think we do really well here in Epping Forest District, and it's something that I'm going to make sure that we continue doing. Next slide, please. So, as much as that's all well and good, me speaking about what my priorities are and what the policing priorities are, probably the most important part of the presentation. I know you wouldn't usually hear that when you say it, but it is really important to me to hear about your concerns and your issues, and I'm sure you will have some. So there may be things that I haven't spoken about. So again, thank you for listening, and I'm sure there's a lot of hands up and a few questions. Happy to take questions and answer what I can, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, please.
Thank you, Chairman. 3 quick points and then an important question. I don't want to make a big thing about it, but in terms of your communication, if you mean Epping Forest, you should say Epping Forest, because the bulk of Epping Forest do not identify with Epping. Okay, the biggest communities are Waltham Abbey, Loughton, Buckhurst Hill, biggest single communities. And if they see the word Epping, not interested, to be blunt. It's not a place they come to in large numbers. It's not a place they identify with. So if you mean Epping because you're doing an operation in Epping, that's fine. But if you mean Epping Forest, then you need to say Epping Forest. I just think that's an important thing for you to understand. The bulk of the people I represent in Loughton don't come to Epping. There's no need to. They don't see Epping as a place that they would come to. So names matter. So if you're talking about Epping Forest, use Epping Forest, because that helps you relate to people who don't live in Epping. My other comment I wanted to make, which I think is really important, just on behalf of the people I represent, I want to say thank you. I'm not saying the police get absolutely everything right, but I always look upon it as one of the occupations that when the men and women of our police force put their uniform on each morning, they do not know what they're going to face. And there's, you know, a higher probability than in most jobs that they could face something that's quite threatening and some quite dangerous. So I certainly want to say a big thanks for what you do. My third point is just a minor one. Could we have the PowerPoint circulated after the meeting so that we can look at it more carefully? My question, and it's an important question, particularly for Loughton, and I'm sure it happens in other communities along the central line, but I do know that it happens every summer within Loughton. And there's an element of moral panic around it, I do accept that. But equally, I know our communities are really worried about it, particularly during the summer. Groups coming down on the central line, there's always one or two incidences, either immediately around the station or on the large local recreation ground. So the specific question I wanted to ask tonight was, what is your honest assessment of your ability to work really closely with the Transport Police? What kind of links have you got? Are they good links? Are they strong links? And are they links where, if you needed to act together quickly, you're happy in your own mind that can actually take place quite quickly? So it's to do with how you work with the Transport Police and how good and strong those links are, please.
Thank you, Councillor. To probably just touch on all those, my apologies. I welcome the feedback. The only reassurance I can give you is, I think due to the size of the district, I say, and this is probably, again, my fault, it's similar to if I worked in the Metropolitan Police in Romford, I'd refer to it as Havering. It's because the district in Essex is called Epping Forest District, which is why I refer to that. I don't want to create confusion. But then on the flip, I suppose, as much as I can say specifics, and I know this district has got a vast amount of towns, and I know that Epping, the demographics are vastly different to that of Waltham Abbey, to that of Buckhurst Hill, to Roydon. I've worked this area for a number of years. I know it well, and I welcome that feedback and thank you. And no, it's rightly said that the issues that affect the residents of Loughton are very different to the issues that may affect the residents of Waltham Abbey. So for the sake of, I suppose, brevity, it's not going on that, but I take that on board. Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and your feedback. It's always really welcome. It's a challenging job, but having feedback from the likes of yourselves is always really welcome. So again, thank you. So some reassurance. It's a very unique setup that we have here in the sense that this is the only district in Essex that has a central line tube link into the Metropolitan Police. That creates some unique challenges, and it always has done. Even if you go back to when I first got here in 2011, the central line allows criminals to be transient. The reality is, in Southend, all the way on the other side of the county, they have very similar issues. But what is clear, and what you have my assurances and promises on, is that we have not good, excellent working relationships with not only the British Transport Police, but with the Metropolitan Police. If we believe that we are being infiltrated by a gang, for example, both my inspector and I are on first-name basis with the command teams for the gangs unit, for example, in the Met. A good example of which would be previously in the last 4 months we had a chap coming in from London who had targeted the BP in Debden I think it was around about 14 times. He had jumped the counter and was not just shoplifting, it was actually offensive burglary he was committing by going over the counter. Our joint work with the British Transport Police and the Metropolitan Police allowed us to identify, arrest and detain that chap on an operation when he was en route walking back to the shop, while in support with the BTP as well, ready on standby at the station. That's one example of probably many I could give you. We have operations specifically targeting problems for people travelling as well to Loughton. We'll set up knife arch operations at the tube stations, particularly along the summer months. If we have an issue and we have to react, then of course we'll do that as well. But the networking is there, the relationships are in place. It's not something that I would need to come in or take credit for. They were there when I arrived, and I've been really happy with what I've seen, and some reassurances that if we need to speak to each other, we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. And it's good to hear that crime is down. I do hear that quite often. But in Grange Hill, as the District Council and also as the Neighbourhood Area Coordinator, I do have a lot of people that come to me with the issue, the fact that a beat officer keeps getting pulled and transferred into Loughton. Again, we haven't got a beat officer, and everybody now refuses to report any crime because they said there's nobody here supporting us. Even though we all know you are, from their point of view, there's nobody about, we haven't got a beat officer. The crime that's being committed against the retail shops in Grange Hill is not being reported. And every time I speak to them, it's down to the fact that we have nobody representing us. We have the police there, but they just don't want to report it. Obviously, the retail people don't want to report it because they know their insurance will go up. Is there anything I can feed back to them about beat officers, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So we have allocated beat officers to every beat inside of the districts. However, does that mean that that beat officer is walking the beat on their areas? No. And to be really transparent here, there is an excellent community policing team based out of Loughton, some of which, the officers that have worked here for almost 30 years in service, so their expertise and understanding the issues there are unique. The team, though, are responsible not only for their own beats, but they're responsible for dealing with a wide array of different problems, but that can range from, we've spoken about some of the proactive operations, for example, I've mentioned the issue there with that gentleman that was arrested at the BP garage. If we see a problem in Buckhurst Hill that requires a teamed response, the community policing team will address it. I can't promise you that you're going to see that officer in your beat walking down the street. Would I like to be able to do that? Yes. But we need to ensure that the resources are balanced and where they need to be to ensure that we're meeting those priorities and keeping people safe. To counter that, of course, and thankfully, you would have seen no doubt in the national news, obviously, but we have our police community support officers that are more of our visible arm on the street, but our officers walking down the street and engaging is very beneficial in engagement days. But when we're talking on patrol, criminals have the use of e-scooters now, bikes, vehicles, they need to be mobile, and usually they're going to be in vehicles. If we're talking about key engagement, though, where confidence is low, that's a concern. And in particular, if we're talking about Grange Hill, that they're feeling like there's no point in reporting anything. My counter to that is always, when I speak to members of the public, they say, oh, you know, I've reported something but nothing happened. Just because nothing happened doesn't mean it isn't going to. You know, and it's the reason for that is you could report there's drug dealing happening outside this store, there's been a theft, nothing happens. You report it again, nothing happens. In the background, those reports will land on my desk. They will land my community policing team, and that allows us to look at, there is a problem here, for example, in Grange Hill. We've seen an increase in X or Y, and as a result of which, we're now going to put the whole team on an operation to deal with it. And we've had some success in doing that in areas already. I know, though, that, and it's good that you mention it, but it's the likes of yourself that can help us with that, and us now, because of what you said, I can ensure that, for example, my town centre team sergeant, Jamie Shepherd, who's been exceptional in leading Operation Marilyn, if you're saying there's a problem of retail crime there, then I'm interested. And I would ask that at the close of the meeting, can I take your details? I'll link you in with my town centre team sergeant, and I will arrange for the town centre team to go down and speak to some of the retailers. If it's the communities that feel unsafe, we can look at a pop-up event which will be my community engagement safety officer and maybe other PCs from the community policing team, inviting people to come and speak to us, telling us about their problems, and then we can do something about it. One of the mechanisms that we're really going to try and work on in our social media feeds through Facebook and X and Instagram, and you may have seen this already, we'll go to an event and someone might say to us, there's drug dealing going on in, I'm speculating here folks, but main road in X location. I'm not going to say a location because I don't want to speculate as to what it might be. Within the next 72 hours, we will respond to that. Officers will go and do an operational target patrols, and then we'll post with a picture of the officers in the area patrolling. So we're kind of showing people that if you report things to us, even if it's just in conversation, we're listening. And these are the results from it. We, of course, have our newsletters and dispatch where you'll get all the big wide array of all the amazing work that we're doing, but we want to turn these around faster. So I'll look at arranging a pop-up event there, and definitely I'd like to speak to some of your retailers to understand the concerns, because if I thought they were speaking to retailers in the likes of Loughton, Waltham Abbey, Epping, etc., and they were linked into the businesses there, they would understand the benefits of reporting and how it can make the shops safer for their staff. Regardless of insurance claims, if we understand who criminals are, they'll be targeted, arrested, the crime will go down.
Thank you. Yeah, we do keep telling everybody, if you report it, it builds up the intel.
Mm-hmm.
It does help. It's just that they do feel very dismayed, I've got to say, because we are often told, and the community groups there have been told, that we don't have a community policing officer linked to Grange Hill. That's the hardest bit. The other bit is that they are scared to report the drug dealers that are going on and where they're situated.
I will provide you with details of who your beat officer is, and as much as that is not your single point of contact to report crime, it's understanding who that is, particularly if you're like to yourself, you can link in with those. You do have a beat officer for that area, and there is an exceptionally good community policing team that police that area. Certainly if that's the way people are feeling, I'll look at raising that maybe at the next community forum, or even at an event that we might run there. But as far as an anonymous way of reporting, look, I understand that sometimes you dial 999, people pick up the phone very quickly. If you dial 101 on a Saturday night, I know I've heard some reports of people waiting for, it could be 10, 15, 20 minutes even, People don't necessarily want to have their name associated with concerns for crime, particularly drug dealing. I completely understand that. There are many ways to remain anonymous and reporting crime. And the most straightforward, if you don't want to go direct to Essex Police, and again, I can send some information on this if it helps, just go online to Crime Stoppers by phone, post, email, and you can report crime anonymously. Yeah, anonymously, it comes straight through to me. I have a data drop, I see that intelligence, and I've spoken about the drugs warrants that we've been carrying out. That activity and those drug warrants that have been taking place have had major use from anonymous intel being reported by the communities, where we've said to people, look, if you don't tell us about it, nothing's going to change. And we rebuild that confidence by showing you've told us, we've acted. And that is, as much as that's something that I feel that we need to improve on, is something that we already are working on and improving on, and very much so with that. It's hopefully my team can assist you with that message. And again, I'm happy to work with you on that as well. So if you feel that there's community confidence issues, we'll see what we can do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Nuriki.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to join my colleague, Councillor Murray, to commend the police for the amazing job they're doing. And I was speaking to a constituent of mine a few days ago that had an attempted break into her flat. And she said to me she was very terrified. But she called the police and they arrived within a few minutes, which was amazing. Well, that said, there is one side that I'm a bit concerned with. She called me back yesterday saying she's not heard back from the police of any updates, what is going on with the case, if they know who tried to break into her flat or not, and that is very concerning for her. And that reminds me, I know for many years there's been I don't know if it's a policy or a process where the police don't follow up on burglary incidents. I'm glad to see in your report that burglary is down by 8.9%. My question here is, are we still having the policies of not visiting burglary victims after the case, or is that changed? And if it's changed, what impact is it having? My second or the third question is...
I'm writing them down, Councillor, you're fine.
So my third question is around the knives, the amount of knives that have been removed from the street, which is, you said is 688 knives and bladed weapons, which is amazing. My question in that area is, was this done through stop and search, or is it voluntary removal of the knives from the will-be users of the knife? Just to understand, is it through stop and search, or people just voluntarily give back those knives to the police?
I'll answer that one first, if I could. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so for clarification, Operation District was nothing to do with stop and search, or we've found these knives on the street. We work with students at the local college in Loughton, and we highlight the dangers of weapons to educate around the risks of carrying knives, what it can entail, what it can mean. What we then bolt that onto is with police officers, the students will go out and they will door knock on areas, and they will engage with people, and they will highlight the concerns around weapons, but also what they're highlighting is the change in the law that took place 18 months ago around prohibited weapons. And if they had any in the house, you know, there was an answer where they could surrender those weapons and they would come back and they would take control of them. It was that operation and that engagement with the public that removed those knives. And when we're not just talking people handing over kitchen knives and here's a knife. We're talking about very nasty weapons that were there to maim, injure people, which you'd be surprised with the legislation changes and people didn't understand that you could no longer have a katana blade, or that in some cases you had some, a zombie knife which someone had collected as a replica or a movie piece, and it was no longer allowed, and the risks that it would entail, because if that was sold at a later date, that can end up on our streets and it can end up in the hands of someone looking to cause harm to someone else. So that's where that statistic has come from, not through stop and search. Although, don't get me wrong, of course, we are taking knives off the streets for the use of stop and search where needed and where required, of course. Your other points, thank you again for your feedback. Always really pleased to hear, and I'm sorry to hear that one of your constituents has been broken into. So clarification for you. First and foremost, if you're looking for a follow-up at the close of the meeting, I don't mind passing you my contact details, and I can look into that for you and come back to you just with a direct update to assist your victim. For full transparency, every victim of crime is entitled to a certain standard of contact and compliance from police, what we call the Victims' Charter, which is there to see, laid out by government. There's a certain level of contact from police that they can have, or should be, it's kind of like the standard, it shouldn't drop below that. From the initial point of contact, the officer will then agree with the victim as to when they will usually be in touch after they leave the scene. If it's over the phone and you report it and you haven't seen police, that can usually be as quick as 5 days. However, from the initial point of contact and being at the scene, the contact is usually set for 28 days. And the person is entitled to be updated once every 28 days. Now, that seems like a very long time. If we're thinking, well, you know, I'm concerned, I want to know what's going on in my investigation. The contact details for the officer investigating the case will be passed to the victim. Again, they work a shift pattern of 2 earlies, 2 late, 2 nights, 4 rest days. So you can go a time, and bear in mind that's being balanced with emergency calls and other commitments. There can be delays, but emails can be sent, and officers have got access to their emails at any time of the day, and they will look to respond when they can. Those 28 days, though, the investigation is still ongoing. Evidence is still being collated. But I don't like the thought of a victim feeling that they're being left in the dark, and there's some concerns there you've mentioned. So again, I'll happily pick that up with you after and pass my details, and I can follow it up for you. And finally, we attend burglary incidents in Essex. Burglary is very important for us. We understand the impact of your home being broken into by someone and how that can impact, regardless of how minor some might describe that, because burglary can vary in different degrees. It could be that someone has kicked your door in while you're there and the impact that has around that, but you have to understand that that can still impact just as much someone coming home from holiday and finding that their home has been broken into and their personal items and belongings have been taken. It was on my priorities for that reason, and it continues to be one of our Chief Constable's top priorities for Essex. So you will see a police officer report a burglary. I can't guarantee you it's going to be immediately, but you will see a police officer.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I ask my question, could you just clarify, you said you're going back to the term neighbourhood policing. Is that for community police and town centre police? For both?
Yeah, so it's a direction set out by government. The reason being is police forces up and down the country we love acronyms in the police, unfortunately, I'm sure you'll know. And there's been many names that community policing has been known as. The government wants a nationally recognised way of policing our communities, and each team that polices those communities needs to have the same name. And that will be, I believe, from April, all across up and down, including the Metropolitan Police, will be referred to as neighbourhood policing teams. And yes, they are your community policing teams. However, not to confuse you, although they're a branch of the town centre teams, are a specific branch off of your community policing teams that are solely focused on our towns, and their name will remain unchanged.
Right. So I was also going to raise retail crime. It's certainly an issue in Epping High Street, and we have a meeting called Safer Epping, which meets every couple of months, which is a town council committee originally. And we did have at the last meeting, I think, someone from your business police team
Business crime team,
who
yeah.
came down to speak. But I was interested that you said you have these monthly meetings with the Retailers Forum. I've not heard of the Retailers Forum whenever it's been raised. So I just wondered who goes to the Retailers Forum. Would the people in Epping, the retailers, then know about it?
I should hope so. And again, I suppose if you was to speak to a retailer who didn't, please contact me and let me know. It's an open invite to any of our retailers inside of our town centres that we feel are affected. That invite is also extended outwards because there are some areas, although our town centres, of course, are usually the most vulnerable to retail crime. And when I say retail crime, shoplifting, what we call business burglary, as well as business robbery is a classification on there. So there's varying degrees and severity there. But we are seeing that there are certain stores of retail, particularly BP franchises with Marks and Spencer's, that are targeted in higher volumes than other stores that are outside of the town centres. So as a result of which we would invite them along as well. The invite is sent, it runs usually on a monthly basis. We run one for both Epping as well as on the other side of the district that I cover. Brentwood has the same facilities as well. And if you need details of where that invite needs to come from or how you can share that to, and very much it's for the retailers and the businesses, I can get those details for you and pass them out to you, Councillor.
Yes,
no problem at all.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for such an interesting presentation about all the work that you do. And I do actually, confirm what other councillors have said, how hard you work and so on. My question really relates to a couple of things. One is that you stated that on your slide there about the public perception being that about 36 or 37% that the police aren't doing anything. Perhaps I'm paraphrasing that a little bit. But I also get the impression that that is one of the lowest in Essex, and I'm wondering what you are trying to do about publicising some of the work that you do and promoting yourselves, and look forward to having more engagement with some of the local communities. I know that we've talked about it prior to this, about Ongar. But I'm also interested in one of the reports that we're looking at tonight as well, is the community safety partnership, and how much involvement you have with that, because there are obviously some questions that might come up later on the agenda. And in particular, what has come out from that, and I think you alluded to it, is road safety is a really high priority as far as Epping Forest residents are concerned. And yes, there are some crime involved in that, but I'm wondering if you can actually tell me how we can actually approach getting better measures, if you like, to promote road safety, because as you probably know, in planning terms, any new developments and things, there is a very low bar that highways have to actually say a developer has to do on safety aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I've written as much down as here, so if I get any of this wrong or if I've missed anything, please let me know and challenge me at the end. So the perception data, in reality, no, it was 61, without actually looking at my notes here because my laptop decided to calm down on me. 61% of people in Epping believe we're doing a good job and are happy with policing in Epping, Loughton, Chigwell, Buckersteel, etc. What the survey showed us is that those that were surveyed believed that crime and ASB are, I think it was, are better or are being targeted better by Essex Police, and it was quite low at 35%. So what does that tell us? Because we know crime's down, we know ASB is down, but residents feel that we're not doing enough about it. And this really links into that engagement piece around really, I feel like we're doing some amazing work, but people just don't know about it. And it's how we share that out wider, which I think links in quite nicely to what you said around our engagement and what we're doing about it. I'm a really firm believer in, my career in policing, that the fear of crime can be just as impactful as being a victim to crime itself. I've seen firsthand, particularly in my experience in community policing, that I think it's any of you that might live maybe in an example or maybe a new build housing development. We now are seeing residential WhatsApp and Facebook groups, which are really, really good for residents to share concerns, for security concerns, or even it could be minor residential issues. But we also see on there, and in a state that will remain nameless in my last district, where we had one incident that occurred of a very minor nature. In 5 days from the post that we've been putting on there from fictitious information, the estate had got itself into such a frenzy that it believed there was a crime wave occurring and children were being taken. It's not the case, and it's our job to reassure those communities, and it links in really nicely to how are we engaging then in changing that perception. And that's what that engagement improvement plan is that I allude to. I recognise that we need to improve the way in which we're engaging with the communities here. The approach that we had modelled, I don't think was working. We simply wasn't reaching enough people. We, of course, use social media. I keep mentioning it, and I'm kind of plugging it because I'm hoping you follow these feeds as well. We also have a monthly dispatch letter, which I continue to push, and I will to all of you, to your constituents. If you haven't heard of it, please come and see me at the end. I'll give you a QR code and get as many people to sign up as possible. That newsletter lists, just from a rolling 4-week basis, what your team in the district have been up to, what arrests have been made, what stops, any key incidents that have been going on, really big successes, what crimes have been solving, what concerns we have, and as well as that, how to contact us so we understand what concerns you have. And we try to push that out. We then have looked at, again, how and where we are. And I've mentioned already, so I won't paraphrase and go over it again, but we're changing where we're sending our engagement teams and our community policing team on what we call our engagement days. We're working with and alongside British Transport Police, for example, join us on engagement days outside of the train stations. We're joined by our partners in the council in some of our engagement days as well. So when we do pop-up events in the high streets, when we go to market days, for example, we even work with the Essex County Fire Rescue Service when we're looking at engagement days, focusing on road safety. We'll go to locations with the fire service to engage with people to highlight the concerns and risks around driving dangerously on the roads, drink driving campaigns, etc. I hope to be sitting here in 12 months' time and telling you about the success and improvements in engagement. That is what we're doing and some of the things that we are working towards, but I recognise that I feel like it needs to improve, and that's very much what my mission is and will continue to be as we move forward into the new year. And I welcome any feedback from any of you as to other ideas that you may have as to how we can engage better and link in with our communities. I'll pass over to Caroline quick just to update you on the CSP bit, if that's okay. She's going to be better to update than I am.
Yeah, so I know in the documents road safety has come out as a priority, and actually for the last 2 years. At the CSP board meeting last week, it was recognised that road and traffic concerns remain a key issue, but there are concerns as to how much the CSP can really sort of influence and work towards, can be of benefit. So one of the joint chairs of the CSP, Superintendent Tubbs, has asked for a small working group to be set up to identify where the CSP can be of benefit. We're looking at what the Safer Essex Road partnerships do, Essex Highways, the roads traffic policing, town and parish council. So that work won't be starting till April, to be honest. I need to get this year over, but we will be looking at that. I think it's a real challenge. I know I struggle sometimes to know what SERP, Safer Essex Roads Partnerships, are doing. I think we've lost some of our contacts with Essex Highways in that I'm sure they're doing work with schools around road safety and traffic, but I can't tell you what they are. So I think there's a piece of work about some mapping exercise, what's going on, what's not going on, and how we can escalate concerns from residents, because at the last public meeting, I would say that road and traffic concerns were the highest priority.
Thank you, Caroline. And look, just to round that one off as well, we'll carry out engagement events, of course, and that's all well and good, but how do we keep the roads safe? Well, it's for enforcement. I can't speak on behalf of highways and the measures that, you know, highways will have to look to implementate in respect of, you've mentioned development on new estates and the road safety and network, if there's repeated collisions, etc. But from an Essex Police standpoint, yes, we feed that information over to highways where we have an area we believe is a concern. But more prevalently, what we would do is we want to respond to the community concerns. If there is an area of which, for example, you feel that there is excess speeding, dangerous driving, you know, people driving in a way that could endanger road users, then either the neighbourhood policing teams or the roads policing team based out of Chigwell, which we're blessed to have, can carry out targeted operations as and when I have that information from you. So again, if you have concerns, councillors, about certain key areas, please pass them on to me and my team. We'll look to analyse it, and I can usually come back to you with some data as well. In some cases, we can come back and go, we've measured X amount of cars, this was the average speed, there was no concerns, and these are reasons why. So at least then that allows you something to challenge back with. But in other measures where we can enforce things, we'll publicise that, say we are here, this is what we're doing, and we're holding people to account because we're not going to tolerate people driving dangerously on our roads.
Thank you very much for that. Now, on the road safety, does that also include dangerous parking around by schools?
That's a very subjective question. It depends. If the vehicle is in, and what would deem to be by law, in a dangerous position, and again, that's very subjective to what the Crown decrees as the offence of leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position, absolutely. But if we're just talking about a vehicle being parked and maybe obstructing the pavement to a certain degree, the offence there is an obstruction of the highway. And the age-old litmus test was, can you push a pushchair through the gap and get through? If the answer is no, usually, then that is the offence. Both police and council can deal with that. The issue being is, though, it's having the available resources to police it robustly. I've seen, you know, many a times people complain about parking where we have the resources to do something about it, particularly outside of schools. We're talking about kicking in, kicking out time at schools, on the school run, high level of pedestrian traffic, children having to walk out into the road. Yeah, my team would respond and do something about that. And you know, we'd work alongside with the councils where we do the same thing. One-off attempts today, if we responded to every call of a parking concern of obstruction of pavement, the reality is those priorities that are up there, we wouldn't be able to focus on. And with the resources that we have, we need to make sure that we're focused on the issues at hand. So where we can, of course, but it very much depends on the severity of the problem and having the resources available to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Markham.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I would like to say thank you to the police force for all their hard efforts. It's very commendable, and it's very positive to hear the crime rate is declining. It is going down, so that's great to hear, very positive. So thank you. My point tonight is pinpointing an area in Waltham Abbey. We have one area particularly that's quite notorious for antisocial behaviour, and that's the Ninefields estate. I've had various residents contact me with their concerns on antisocial behaviour, whereby they're quite intimidated to go actually to Ninefields, to the shops, or even visit the local leisure centre there. They've had sort of aggressive and verbally abusive behaviour towards them, even at sort of 10 a.m. in the morning, where people are drinking alcohol and things like this. They can see obviously there's some improvements going on over there, such as the extra lighting, the cameras, but their concern is there's not much proactive action to tackle the issues as they're actually happening. So it's just putting them off of actually sort of, they live there locally, so they're quite sort of worried about sort of going over there, and it's putting them off of visiting the local shops and actually going into the local leisure centre. So it's a little bit concerning, and this has been quite sort of common recently as well. So I don't know what we can sort of do to look at this situation, please. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and again, thank you for your feedback. Yeah, I know the Ninefields estate quite well, and I know that it's especially got some. I've met many of people that have worked on there, even people that, dare I say, over the years I've worked with as well, lived on the estate. I know there at the moment there have been some concerns raised at other forums in respect to the antisocial behaviour there. I don't have statistics to hand. I know that, and again, it's like I said on there, antisocial behaviour is coming down. But that doesn't mean that it's a perfect picture, and it's reports like that we can then look at and analyse. And I suppose what I would request and say is that allow me to go away, let me look at what we're receiving. If it's a case that we've got a number of antisocial behaviour and crime is escalating in the area, then that is exactly the kind of thing that your neighbourhood policing team will target as a team collectively to increase visibility, to increase confidence, and for want of a better term, you take the estate back. We want people to feel confident with their policing, to report matters to us and see that they will be responded to and dealt with, and please, please pass that back to your constituents. On the flip side, if I look at the data and there isn't an issue with the crime and we're not getting any calls, and it's a similar conversation that I had with another councillor recently, it's either A, that, well, there isn't a problem and people are fearful, or B, the people aren't telling us about the problem because they're fearful of doing so, which is a separate matter. But again, it's something that I feel that my team, and like yourself and I, can work with, and we can formulate a plan as to how we improve that. So I suppose the ask is I will pass you my contact details at the end. Please be in touch, and we'll look at a plan moving forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of areas of concern, really. If you asked my constituents, as one knocking on a lot of doors last year, what comes up, I represent Buckhurst East, which is the area from Roding Valley Station right down to Roding Road in Loughton, Whitebridge Ward, and it's your friends, if you can get Adam and co to come out, because speeding and what I'd say was very antisocial driving, it's not just speeding, is still very much an issue. I mean, we have a volunteers speed watch group, we've got the SID signs, which I think do help a bit. But also I used to often see on Roding Lane, there would be someone doing speed checks, and I haven't seen that for a long time, and they'd usually be quite successful. Again, in the Buckhurst Hill County Primary School, which is situated at the bottom of a cul-de-sac, that is a place that if anyone had a spare hour or two, to go out when they're finishing school at 3 o'clock, particularly because it's at the bottom of that cul-de-sac, at the bottom of the hill, they do get problems. But the other one is something that's a bit more difficult to perhaps, it's not something that's seen, but we know is a growing issue, and that's really about scams and cybercrime. Now, this area has a bigger proportion of older residents, and some of whom I know personally who have been victims of this. And could you tell us what the force is doing to try and raise awareness, etc.?
Thank you. Covering both points for you. Speeding on that road, historically, unfortunately, it's something that I can remember actually doing a speed operation there about 8 years ago. I may have had hair at that point, it was that long ago, but nevertheless, I can recall it very well. And I take that on board that it is a concern, particularly with the nearby schools and location. If we haven't carried out a speed operation there in some time and it's becoming a concern, exactly like I've said to you before already, if you're feeding back to me that you think there's a problem there and that's what the community are saying, I can look at putting something into practice, and you feed that information back to me, we can have the team go out, carry an assessment, or the roads policing team to carry out they can carry out what's called an initial survey, where they stay for a short time in the location, measure the speed of the vehicles to decide whether they need to do something more on force, and we then look down and get support from headquarters with the operational support group and have a very large outing with motorcycles, etc., or we can go more low-key and work alongside with the neighbourhood policing team. But something I can definitely look into for you and report back. In regards to the other matter, you're more likely now to be victim of a theft, unfortunately, by virtue of you sitting at home with a cup of tea in hand, than you would be as it would be 25, 30 years ago of being subject to a fraud. And there are many different various and complex ways in which scammers, not necessarily in the United Kingdom, but nationally, are targeting victims of crime. Cybercrime is and will continue to be a false priority, and it is there on the Chief's plan. It's something that in Essex Police we take very seriously. There are a number of posts that we put out through social media. I'll come to this where there's a little bit of concern there, but on social media on a regular basis, Essex Police and the Epping Forest policing page on Facebook will put out information around awareness for cybercrime, scams, phishing attacks. We also, if we see an emerging trend, as an example, we will put out information. We work alongside not only the banks nationally, but we are supported, of course, by the City of London Police and the NFIB, who are the national lead for anything to do with fraud, cybercrime and awareness. And I am in regular contact with the leads in that department who regularly share information about emerging trends. If we see them trends, we cascade that out, but we don't just do it on social media. And the reason for that is because, unfortunately, the target demographic of some of these crimes are the elderly, because they are less aware of, for example, some of the advanced processing technology. There are even cases now where the advancements of AI is allowing AI to replicate family members' voices, you might even hear, and banks are working to deal with that and ensuring that certain families have code words and understanding of what a scam might be if you get a text from a number claiming to be from one of your children. I know I've spoken to my children, given them advice because they're young, and my oldest has his own bank account, but all the way through to speaking to my mother and father and my great-grandmother, highlighting the concerns. And I suppose the message would be, one, we have a responsibility to ensure that anyone that is vulnerable in our families and our communities are spoken to about these things. And as a police, what we are doing is we know that social media isn't necessarily the way forward with that. So it's the engagement events that I was referring to before around our engagement practice, of where we know that we're not speaking to in the way we should be for our target demographic of anyone in the what we call a 55 plus bracket. Anyone over that age, how are we engaging? Because we're not doing a good enough job. So we're changing where we go, and we're trying to frequent locations where we believe that target demographic will be. And it's there where we have lots of information on exactly those things that you've referred to: cybercrime, business crime. And finally, if you can ask people to sign if they have an email address, if we see an emerging trend, it will be on dispatch. We'll put it on there and we'll circulate it as well as on our social media channels. I welcome any feedback for other mechanisms that you feel might be beneficial. The force does a hell of a lot. The banks have got incredibly well, as really good as well, for speaking to their customers through letters through the door. But if you can think of any other ways, or again, sharing those messages outwards with your own constituents at your own community meetings, it will always help, because I agree it's something that we need to get ahead of, particularly as a country, as we technology advances and we continue to try and catch up.
Councillor Brooks, would you mind to just turn your microphone?
Sorry, my apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Nuruki.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to the road safety item, because it's been raised and discussed already. And my concern in this area is to do with what we're doing with emergency services in terms of reckless driving. I say this because of a personal experience, because around December last year, my son was run down on a pedestrian crossing by a fire truck. And I was surprised to hear the incident, and the police have got in touch with me saying they're investigating the incident because the driver was reckless. And although I've not heard back from them since then, but I was concerned about it to hear that a emergency service will be driving recklessly on our roads. So I'm just wondering, is the road safety we're talking about, are we considering those aspects as well, and looking at how our emergency services are operating on the roads?
Thank you, Councillor. First and foremost, I hope your son is well and good and made a recovery. I'm sorry to hear about that. As far as the emergency services, look, we enforce the law. We're not above it. There are only a very few exceptions that not just police but fire and ambulance have exceptions when it comes to the Road Traffic Act. Drivers go through a vigorous amount of training to qualify for what you call a response-trained driver, and that is the ability to drive under emergency conditions with blue lights and sirens. There is additional training when we're talking about pursuing vehicles or pursuing a subject vehicle that may have committed an offence. There are a variety of risk assessments that come into play when we're talking about pursuits, but we're just talking about response driving. The only exceptions for an emergency would be to pass through a red light, to exceed the speed limit, and to contravene a keep left bollard. Outside of that, it is discretionary, but it has to be justified, including the three exceptions. Vehicles are all fitted with what's best described as a black box. They have a visually recording camera. Officers have cameras on the front. our driver training school monitor the data from the black boxes, which is remotely transmitted on a regular basis, and we receive data drops. So even if we're having officers that haven't had a call, should we say, of concern from a member of the public, and we had a complaint made, which can happen, the data might show that certain individuals are travelling in excess speed on a far too more frequent basis, or the traction of the car is in excess to what their training would determine. That's analysed and rectified to ensure the problem is addressed before we have a problem. The vehicles are also checked on a weekly basis to ensure that they are safe to drive, be it tyres, bodywork, etc. And look, ultimately, where officers, staff members for the ambulance service or even the fire service would be deemed to unnecessarily have broken the law, they'll be held to account. It's as simple as that. And again, I reiterate, we're there to uphold the law. We are not above it.
I would just like to say something on that. Just recently,
Sorry.
Yeah, just recently in Waltham Abbey, I was literally walking along the pavement. Where I live, we've got the traffic lights. Now, you could hear the fire engine, and cars had pulled away. The lights was red, the fire engine's coming down here. And this person then pulled out almost in front of him. And so it certainly was nothing to do with the fire engine doing the wrong thing. But you see, that if it had hit it, would the driver then be told he was being reckless? I don't mean the stupid person in the car, but if they had been hit, it probably would have spun shot on the pavement and knocked me down as well at the same time. But I'm sure there's loads of incidents like that, because I've been driving and no one pulls out the way. Aren't they taught that anymore when they're learning to drive?
I would hope so. However, look, and there are some people, yes, that the rule of thumb that we try to educate, and there was an advertising campaign that actually went on, I think it was last year, it was publicised, and it was from the NHS, the police and the fire service of trying to educate road users as to what we need. And in essence, it's make a space, just make a gap, or I will do the hard work. You know, officers are trained to a very, very high status. It's very a vigorous training course that, believe me, not every police officer passes to be able to drive. I can say with a degree of certainty, bearing in mind for the amount of time I've done the job, and that's even policing through the London riots, the most dangerous thing that any police officer will do in their career is drive under response conditions. The rate of injury to the public and officers is so high, which is why the training and the enforcement is as high as it is, which is why, as well as that, there's a degree of expectation that, you know, in that scenario, if a collision was to occur, even if it may have been the member of the public's fault, we would still look at the fact that that driver is trained to a higher standard. So as a result of which, has everything been done by the officer and the fire, shall we say, the fire officer at the time, to ensure that the public were kept safe.
Could miss it.
Yeah, well, this is always good to hear. But if there's learning there, look, we have a duty to ensure that we serve the public trust, we maintain public confidence. We need to drive quickly to arrive to emergencies to ensure that we keep people safe and we're catching criminals, but it cannot be done by unnecessarily putting the public at risk. You know, the ends miss justify the means. But I appreciate your feedback, and well, Councillor, as well. I appreciate your feedback to you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murray.
It's important. The chief inspector, made the point that in some scenarios, accurate information out in the public arena about an event or an ongoing situation is really important. I just wanted to check, and I get the impression you probably are, I just wanted to check if you are aware that I think personally, and lots of other people do, that we're very fortunate in Epping Forest to have a professional journalist who is dedicated to running a Facebook page called Everything Epping Forest, which a lot of people across the district take information from. It's perceived, in my view, accurately as being reliable and accurate, and it seems to me that he must have been working with the police or being fed accurate information with the police, because it appears, the page appears to have timely and accurate updates on situations, and I would encourage you to carry on doing that, because I think you're absolutely right. Up-to-date information that the members of the public can rely on helps counteract misinformation that seems to go around even faster.
Thank you. And yes, in my first 4 weeks of being in the district, I met with Mr. Jackman, We've got a good working relationship. He's joined my community policing team on operations and will continue to do so. That's not because he's getting preferential treatment, it's exactly what you said. I recognise quite quickly that as a source of information, and very much information that the public and communities trust, it's a very reliable source. As a result of which, obviously in line with press regulations, because he obviously has a very good working relationship with our press office and team, but specifically as a district commander, I think the more transparent that we can be and really championing the work that, you know, the men and women are doing, working for Essex Police here in the districts and what we're doing, and having that information available to the likes of those news outlets outside of our own. It's all very well to go to our social media feeds, but part of that engagement action plan that I created was a better working relationship with the likes of Everything Epping Forest and others that we are actually working on developing at this time. But again, thank you, and I'm pleased to say at least we're ahead of the trend on that one.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. You said about the council and the police to do with obstruction. What, in fact, I mean, having been a councillor 20 odd years, I'd like to know what we can do, because when I've spoken to people that have been completely blocking the pavement, and women with pushchairs are going on the road, apart from getting a load of abuse, they just don't move anyway. So you actually said the police and the council could do something. So what can the council do?
I can't speak on behalf of the council, and I'll allow an electo to say if they will. I'll speak on behalf of the police, and I would say it's a venture very much that's jointly owned, but it goes back to it's an offence of an obstruction of the highway, and I mentioned about parameter because that's in the law can be a wonderful and intricate thing at times, and when we talk about that offence, the way we would teach it to officers is if it's obstructing the pavement to the degree that you couldn't fit a pushchair through, then the offence is complete. Can we deal with every report of an obstruction of the highway? No. We simply cannot, and the reason for that is we need to make sure that if an emergency call comes in, we can deal with it, or if there is a priority involving antisocial behaviour in Ninefields, we can go and deal with it, or if there's a concern or an operation run at the local college, and so forth. And all the things that we've mentioned, there is a finite amount of cops, and I trust in my sergeants and inspectors and leaders to know where we need to put those resources. Does that mean it will be ignored though? No. And I say that because although there might be one officer, you can report such matters, particularly if it's maybe, again, I speculate, but a neighbour that's continually doing that, or a certain vehicle at every time parking outside the school, causing prams, pushchairs, and people picking up their children every time. Do we want to know about that? Yes. Can we respond to it straight away? Unlikely. That doesn't mean that we won't in the future. And then this is where it comes to the confidence reporting and having those mechanisms and understanding that you may pass something to the council and say this is continuing an issue, a vehicle parks outside a school, etc., etc. That information might be passed by the council to my team to go in action. Vice versa, we may take a problem and we feel that the council can support us better. So we work very well with one another in focusing on those community issues, and parking is one that will and will continue to come up. But when it comes to that key offence of obstruction of the highway, it's one that jointly we look to try and target. And if it's one that's an issue anywhere in your constituency that you feel needs some focus and attention, then pass it our way, we'll assess it. If we can do something with it, the resource we've got, we will.
Yeah, the local policeman has been round, but they just continually keep parking there, and it's on a bend in the town. But so, and he took their numbers and he said he's spoken to them numerous times. Is there nothing when they just keep continually doing it? The police are aware. Can they not have points on their licence or something? Because where it is so dangerous. It's in the centre of Waltham Abbey, on a bend, and they park their vans and cars. Not only one car, sometimes two abreast. And you can't even see round the corner, and there's a bus stop opposite, so if the bus is parked there, I'm amazed no one's been run over. It's just that, is there nothing with people that just continually do it that can happen with points or something?
I think Councillor Williams. Sorry, could I just ask Councillor Williamson, I think you'd like to reply to the question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In Epping Forest, in the District Council, we have the ability to stop parking on grass verges now. That was something that was brought in last year. It's controlled by NEP. It's under the Essex Act. So if it's a maintained grass verge, then we can stop people parking on it. We were doing we tried several ways to address the parking on pavements. It's not something we as a district council can do. We thought we had a way forward, but it didn't work. It needs a change in the law because London bylaws don't allow pavement parking, but it's a free-for-all anywhere else. I accept the point that it is an offence, but it is so far down the list of things the police have to deal with. It is frustrating, it's wrong. I've tried calling people out on school drop-offs and you just get abuse. Fine me, I don't care. If it's 50 quid, I don't care. It's pocket money to them. And all they care about is themselves. And that comes back to the antisocial driving. I think it was when we were looking at the turn-off of towards High Beach, and Essex County Council did a paper and said 70% of people will actually heed the signs, 30% of people will just ignore them. And that's what we're up against. And how many police have we got? We would need one per one on it, one on each junction. I totally agree it's wrong, and we'll keep pressing to try and find a way. But we have been looking at it. Well, I've been looking at it for 3 years now.
Yeah, but the net person came round, said it was nothing to do with them, the parking warden, and just ignored it.
If it's an offence, it's nothing to do with NEP. But NEP, if there are restrictions in place, they can do the double yellow lines parking, I believe. I'm not 100% sure about it, but I believe they can. But parking on the pavement is something... we've got people in Buckhurst that now permanently leave their car, all four wheels on the pavement. So they've got no garage space at home, but they're just leaving their cars on the pavement. It's wrong, but we have to keep working to find a way.
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Balcombe, please.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, I've got to say that I agreed with Councillor Morgan on a lot of things, and some of that I'm going to bring back up again. But I represent a rural ward, which is probably one of the biggest areas we've got, if you took it by size. People there have got a different way of looking and do agree with what Councillor Morgan says. They report crimes, but they don't hear anything back. And I think that is very important, that we need a better liaison back to the people to get them more involved. If they feel like they're not getting an answer or not being answered back, they tend to say, oh, what's the point of reporting it? What I will say is that we're very lucky in the area to have Warren Shepherd, our local policeman, who introduced the DNA markings for the farmers, which has seemed to protect a lot of their equipment, and a lot of people who live in the rural areas have diggers, things like that. So that side of the crime has seemed to die down. But we've got things, as I go round talking to people and go to every parish council meeting, and I've got 7, so it's a bit unfair. The things we actually hear. But before we go there, I should also say that speeding through the whole of my ward is a big problem, and we've been lucky enough to set up a meeting through Inspector Jonathan Main, which you probably know about. We've got highways coming down, we've got a county council representation, Warren's coming, and a selection of the local councillors inside my ward, parish council and town councillors wide, including Councillor Dad, I think, is on attendance on that meeting as well, which we're hoping to look at this speeding through the village, which does happen at the weekends, 8:30 or before. It's definitely car clubs who come through, because it will come through like 7 Lamborghinis, lots of noise. Obviously driving slowly and caring, but it's the noise. You've got people crossing the road because you have to cross the road to get to the shop because the pavement's on the other side. Old people are now scared to cross the road that time in the morning to get their papers, things like that. I mean, yes, you can hear them coming. The other thing is on, the 184, isn't it? We have constantly on a Sunday morning motorbikes, which are clubs, cruising through, going out, because you know it's a rat run that is quite used for speeding, and set up on corners, we have adverts for photographs and the car parked up, obviously taking photos. The bikes are coming through at a speed, laying at a nice angle on the ground, you know. It's all done for photos, but it's not safe for drivers coming the other way. So that does happen. It's died off a little bit through the winter, but it will pick up again in the next few weeks. So speeding is a big thing. We did look at having set up with speeding cameras, but again, the residents stopped doing it because they got abuse and it died off. As Mandy knows, parts of it's got a big fly tipping issue. The questions we're being asked at every parish council meeting, and Mary will back me up on this, are vehicles being seized? How do we know? And how can we get out there what we are doing better and reporting it back? Coffee mornings do work, but there's only certain residents who can attend them. Is it wrong that coffee mornings are always 9:30 till 11:30, say, on the first Monday of the month or whatever? I know it depends when Warren's on duty, but should we be looking sometimes at evening ones so people who go to work have got a chance to bring things up? So that's another point. Lack of police officers is always going to be the common thing out there, and I don't think we can solve that one. But they do like a visual presence, and it makes people feel safe just to see a police car drive through. I mean, Warren's very good at that when he's on, especially if he's on late at night. He'll come in the back lanes and he'll put his blue lights on sometimes just so they know in the dark that he's coming down. I think that is very good, but there is a problem, as I say, with reporting crime. Vehicle crime is another one. As you're probably aware, they've had 2 big hits of 4x4s and that being stolen in the villages, and that is quite common at the moment. What other note have I got? A coffee with cops. Sharing, as you know, I know Mandy and that now are looking to buy their own speed cameras and set them up. But that's slowly moving along, isn't it, Mandy? Yeah. So that was my real main points. It's they feel that there's not they feel that the rural side doesn't get the support that the town side gets, and they don't see enough police officers.
Thank you, Councillor. I've made some. My pen's on fire. I've made some notes. I'm going to cover as much of that as I can, and thank you again. So, look, I'll start with rural crime. I'm glad you've mentioned it. There was a really good example of problem solving and crime reduction when we started seeing the increase of the agricultural theft that were taking place. I think when we looked at that at the close of 2025, the selected DNA kits were brought in, 83.3% reduction in those types of thefts. And I hope that it's those kind of incidents where we should be increasing confidence there to say, where you've reported and shown us a problem, we've looked at the problem, we've addressed it, and we've seen an improvement. And that's really the message, I suppose, that I would push back to the community of saying the more that you share with us, particularly around your concerns and problems, we will target them. If we can be innovative in our way of dealing with it as well, we will continue to do so.
2 Saturdays ago, we actually had hunt saboteurs, and they were driving around in 4x4s, 4 up, masked up, dark glasses, balaclava, everything, all in black. Elderly residents were quickly phoning. The grapevine was going mad. I was receiving calls. So we went up, had a look. Yeah, they're out there. Pulled up at one. What you doing? No answer. Just looked the other way in the car. Wouldn't take any talk to us. So we phoned the police, and I've got to say they responded within 10 minutes. And that was a good point for you.
Thank you. No, and look, and again, look, and this, I don't want to sound negative in the sense, but saying where we can't be everywhere, and in policing as we move forward into the future, into 2026 and beyond. And even if you look at the MPCC's, police improvement plan of what the future of policing looks like, we need to make sure that our resources are where they need to be. And I wish that we could have more visibility in every location. The most common issue that is raised, be it from rural communities, from town centres, to communities, to towns, is more visibility. People want to see police, more police, which is always nice to want to be seen. And believe me, I will do my absolute utmost to ensure that from the resources that I have, they're as visible and accessible as can be to the public. But it's not always going to be to the level maybe of what people want. I'm pleased that you feel supported by PC Shepherd. His name's come up a few times, and I know Warren quite well. I will make sure that's passed back to him and you see some recognition from that. And of course, you've mentioned my Inspector John Main, and that's where that conversation will take place, because that's who obviously manages him. We've also, of course, got the Rural Engagement Team, who will carry out work with the likes of the incident you referred to about hunt saboteurs. As well as that, we're talking about engagement and the selected DNA pilot that we ran that was supported by a rural engagement team, and they will always be there to engage with the farming community, rural community, outside of your community policing team. So I can't account for the design of the road network, but again, and I've said this a few times now, if there is a specific area of concern with speeding, please share it with me and my team. To the likes of it sounds like you have good links already to Warren and Inspector Main. You now hopefully you'll have my details as well, and we'll arrange that at the close to all of you as well. I'll pass on my contact details. Please let me know. If we can do something, we will. We have run operations in respect to that bike cruising event you've spoken about. If it's becoming an issue again, and what you usually find with these forums is we target it, it will then rescind for a while, and then it just might be when it starts to creep up, we need to put some action into place again. If we've got large amounts of motorcyclists, using our road network dangerously and endangering the residents of this district, then that's something that does require attention. And you have my assurances that, again, if we could speak after, or you can send me an email some of your concerns, unless it's already been shared to Warren and John, we could look at setting something up. As far as the residents that you've mentioned, some concerns around the operations targeting car cruisers. You've seen on there that one of the community priorities is car cruising. If we're seeing them cut through, and as much as I love seeing Lamborghinis, I'm sure our communities won't love seeing them with their exhaust going through estates at late at night. I've got a good idea of where they'll be going through, and they'll be transitioning from Harlow, maybe to Loughton, to London, etc. We're linked in with every other district, including the Met, in respect to car cruising, because that's the best approach to it, because they're transient, they move, and they'll go from district to district. So try to expect to hopefully see an improvement on that, but we need people to report it to us. So if you see them, call us. Even if we don't turn up, believe me, it really does help my teams. Finally, you've mentioned fly tipping. We've got Operation Waxon that we run inside of the Epping Forest District, and we do that with the support of our partners in the council, and we do it to really good effect. Yes, we're out there stopping vehicles, we're out there issuing fixed penalty notices, and we will continue to do so. It's not something that the police can deal with on their own, and that's why we run the operation jointly with the council, and I feel to good effect. The assurances that I can give you is I recognise that fly tipping is a cause for concern. It's an operation that has been built, has had some really good successes, and will continue to push on that, certainly as we go forward. But again, continue to report suspicious circumstances, vehicles, help us increase our intelligence is really the message that I want you to push to your constituents. And from there, we'll continue to run that operation and to hold individuals to account that think it's okay to deposit large amounts of rubbish onto our road network.
One of the things I'm asked on that, are the vehicles actually seized? And
if the
can we get that out there?
If the law decrees and allows us to seize vehicles, then we will seize vehicles. But there has to be certain criteria met. We can't seize a vehicle because it was used in fly tipping. However, we have got powers to seize vehicles that are being used in a dangerous condition. We can seize vehicles where there is no insurance. We can seize vehicles if there is a criminal investigation underway and we believe that vehicle is evidence to respect of that crime. So I suppose the message I'm supposed to pass back is people will be held to account for fly tipping by the powers vested to us, certainly by the Crown. They'll be held to account by presenting them to the courts. And if the powers exist to us to seize vehicles under the crime, the powers that are vested to us by government, we will seize vehicles. Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Chairman, I'm only going to make this remark because this meeting is being webcast and it will be available for future viewing. And it doesn't reference any particular hunt within Epping Forest, and I'm not making any particular allegations about any particular hunt, but I just wanted to make it clear that there are councillors here who feel that all groups should keep to the law, And if hunt saboteurs are breaking the law, then they need to be dealt with. But I want to just put on record that there will be councillors, including myself, who feel that there is considerable evidence up and down the country, and it might at some stage affect Epping Boys, that hunts aren't keeping to the law. And I would expect the police to deal with hunt saboteurs, and I would expect the police to deal with hunts if they're not keeping to the letter of the law and the legislation as it stands. And there is considerable evidence up and down the country that that is the case, and I would just expect the police to police both sides of the issue. And I just wanted to make that point, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor, and you took the words right out of my mouth. We're not there to pick sides, we're there to enforce the law, and that's to the letter. If a crime occurs on either side which is in breach of the law, then that's what we're there to do. My officers will enforce the law, and we will remain impartial, ensuring that we enforce that law to the letter. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan.
Mine was just to say a very big thank you for coming along, and I have got pages and pages of notes that I can now take back to my residents and the coordinator. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that, and to all of you, once we do close the meeting, I know I've mentioned a few points, and as much as I've made some furious notes, the ask really, I will pass my contact details on. Please just pass me a couple of lines on email, and in respect to some of the issues that have been raised, and I'll look to address them all individually as well. So hopefully, again, I'm sure if we can continue that dialogue as we move forward, I think that's only going to benefit all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. We have one final question from Councillor Nuruki.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify from what you said earlier about seizing vehicles that are used for fly tipping. I was a bit concerned when you say that you haven't got powers to seize those vehicles, because from my experience working in the field in Westminster City Council, I know from the Environmental Protection Act 1990, there's a provision to be able to seize vehicles that have been used to transport unlicensed waste for fly tipping. And there's that provision to be able to seize the vehicle if we're satisfied that the vehicle is not licensed for carrying waste. So I just want to clarify what you mean by you haven't got the powers to seize vehicles.
Yeah, I'll let you go first. Go on, you by all means.
Thank you, Councillor Newicki. That is something that is the local authority power, not a police power, and we are looking at that at the moment and about the feasibility of us being able to seize and then store and then get them into court, because there's quite tight timelines on that. So we're doing a piece of work around that at the moment to maybe be able to progress that as part of this the fly tipping campaign that we've got going on.
Thank you. And look, just to, I suppose, just put a line under that as well, to a police perspective, and to ensure there's no confusion or ambiguity. The phrasing is, look, where the law allows us to, we will seize vehicles. The problem being is there's so many different strands. It can't always be, if it's this case, then you can seize and not. Simply put, if the law allows us to seize a vehicle, we will. Mandy said it exactly that. There are certain laws and bylaws which police don't actually have, but councils do. And which is why we are working jointly on Operation Waxon. And with those patrols, part of that plan very much is we have a power, for example, to stop vehicles. We may not be able to seize the vehicle, but our colleagues that we're working with, that we with officers, do have that power, and we seize the vehicle jointly and then carry an investigation. So the message is simple. Where the law allows us, jointly, as a partnership, action will be taken.
Thank you. I would just like to take the opportunity on behalf of the Waltham Abbey residents to, one, thank you for everything that you do, but two, just to share their views that I know the main point is visibility. And Councillor Balcombe hit the nail on the head. I know I appreciate that the officers cannot be everywhere, but we have numerous concerns, particularly in the town centre. Councillor Markham already mentioned Ninefields. But we really do, and we really would like to see more presence on the streets, not just on necessarily market day, but especially around later in the evening, so those quiet times would be much appreciated. I look forward to having your contact details to work with you. And I would really like to comment on behalf of everyone here this evening. Your positivity, your experience, your passion for the role, your time here this evening is so well received, and I welcome your continued support. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I suppose just to look, if I can, just quickly respond. I've taken the points already about the 9 fields, which I suppose I can duplicate. You've mentioned market days, please you did, and you are right. As much as we want to engage with people on a higher footfall, and we will like to be there on the market days, I am looking to improve visibility in the district. It is one of my priorities. Is it going to be perfect? No. Can it be better? Yes. And I suppose if you can feed back to me on the areas that you feel that we could be, should we say, maximise our reach around visibility in the areas that need focus, then that's absolutely what we do. And thank you again for your feedback.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. We will now move to item 6, I believe, which is the Epping Forest Community Safety Partnership Annual Strategic Assessment and Annual Report on pages 5 to 65 of the agenda. Members, please can we note that the SCP strategic assessment in the report is restricted. This was classified as official sensitive by the police and we must adhere to that classification. If there are any specific questions in relation to that document, we would need to go into private session. And Carolyn Wiggins will introduce us to the report.
Good evening, everyone. I think, actually, with a lot of your questions, you took my thunder, and I'm going to be interested in what questions I do get. I hope you've had an opportunity to have a good look at the strategic assessment. 42 pages, it does goes on a lot, but what I would say is that every year the process and the data that we're getting from Essex and from partners is improving. And, you know, as much as I think, oh, I've got to do that at this time of the year, it's when you start looking through and reviewing our position and where we're working. I think the items like the water safety data, the fire safety data, and the work we get, information we're getting from partners is like I say, it's the best that we've had for a number of years. I'm not going to spend too much time on the strategic assessment. I'm going to direct you to the annual report and to some of the questions today. And I just want to point out the Selector DNA project, you mentioned Councillor Balcombe, funded by the Community Safety Partnership. OPWAX and fly tipping, the funding come through our bid to the PFCC and a part of the Safer Streets initiative. Oakwood Hill, which it's a really great project, and we're nearly, Melissa's doing all the hard work, but comes to the end in July. Again, funding from the PFCC's office through the avenue of the Community Safety Partnership. The Opdial patrols in Debden, we managed to extend that for a further year. Fantastic initiative. We're hoping we're going to get some Friday evenings, so we're trying to get as much and some action days going up to the beginning of April. CCTV in certain areas, again, same with Oakwood Hill, lighting. And just to say that the CSP annual report really doesn't do justice to the amount of work that's going on, to be honest. As I mentioned earlier, I was at the board meeting last week. Wolverham Abbey Fire Station have community action days. They're going to have a community garden. They have open days on different days of the week where residents go in, community champions, the work we're doing in schools, the theatre projects, initiatives. I think what we try and do is give you a taster. I don't think we do it justice for all the work's going on. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Murray.
And Mary, Dad.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed reading this report. It was a very good read, and it gave us a taste of work that was being done in a whole number of areas, and I think it's very impressive, and it often goes below the radar. One thing that just amused me, and it's not a particularly important point, but particularly when I got to the police section, I did just think to myself, how the hell did they get some of those names for those operations? I mean, Operation Pineapple, Operation Brazil, if only. You know, I just thought they were quite peculiar names, but I mean, if there is a logical explanation for how they get the names, I would like to hear it, but I mean, it certainly caught the eye. And I want to leave my last point to, I was going to say I want to leave my last point to last. Of course I would, because it's my last one. I want to leave my most important point to last, and that is the excellent work, and I know Councillor Necki is aware of this, the excellent work that has been done on Oakwood Hill since May, and that's then therefore since this project has started. It's been in the Loughton Roding ward, which me and Chidi are 2 of the 3 members for, and I have to say that the work has been very impressive. Yes, funding does allow you to do things that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, but equally, just because you've got the money doesn't necessarily mean that it's done in a professional and proper way. And what has impressed, well, a number of things have impressed me. The level of consultation with the local community, and there has been a level of engagement, and I think it has been reasonably high. I would like to have seen it to have been higher, but the opportunity has definitely been there for the local community on the Oakwood Hill estate and around the Oakwood Hill estate to be involved. I think that the officers and the scheme has followed that feedback really carefully. I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to mention individual officers, but I seem to be doing it more and more. I was going to say the chap who's gone has mentioned the council by me. Now he's gone, I've forgotten who he was, but no, I haven't. Phil Hawkins. You know, we've got another officer here, if you don't mind me saying so, in Melissa, who has delivered this project absolutely wonderful. I think the way that she has done it, and I can make a detailed comment because she's afforded the individual councillors, all the 3 councillors for that ward, a high level of involvement and consultation and actually getting in on the days that were held and so on. And we have, to the best of our ability and time, taken those opportunities. But the nature in which she has delivered that project, the way that she has consulted with officers, the way that she deals with when you have emails about what's going on and why it's going on and how she responds in a timely manner. I think she's done a wonderful job as regards the community, and she's done a wonderful job as regards EFDC, and a shining example of what a local government officer should be.
I'd like to second that, and I'd actually say that the Police and Fire and Crime Commissioner's Office sat on a recent Safer Streets meeting, and yeah, Melissa's the lead and driving it, but the cross-service teamwork from housing to the fields team, I forgot that, sorry, gardens, sorry, you know, grounds maintenance, gardens, community development, all the teams. I sit on that meeting and I'm not there. I'm observing and helping Melissa with the minutes because it's you know, the whole council is working as a whole there to do a really good piece of work. I think we took the lessons we learnt from Ninefields and really put that into place with Oakwood Hill. I'm hoping that the PFCC's office will have some more Safer Streets funding in the future. Although we have been told that they are going to probably be looking at areas that have not been as successful as we are. So sometimes, you know, your success can work against you. But we don't want to finish in July and leave, you know, like we've continued work, it's some of the work in Ninefields, and we try to do a legacy, and you've got the train carriage. We're both really keen, even though you're going to be on maternity leave, that there's continual work in Oakwood Hill and there's a legacy on there. So I'm going to hand over the bit about the name generation to...
It's a random generated name that comes out from a database in our systems, and we get 3 names that we can pick from. I'd love to say we do have some amazing names which sound like they're fresh out of an 80s action movie, but they can't always be of that ilk. We try to pick them, but yeah, sometimes they are odd, but they're just there as a code name to allow us to operate. So I acknowledge that Operation Pineapple doesn't quite have the sting of like Operation Viper or something like that, but yeah, the main thing is that the result of the operations and the fact that they are working, and yeah, I have a bit of transparency there. We don't pick them, put it that way. Thank you.
Councillor Dadd.
Thank you, Chairman. And on that point about name making, obviously the CSP had a reason for calling it Minerva. Anyway, to my points, I want to first of all say to commend the CSP for their work that they've done, and also what an interesting read. You've answered one of my queries, which was what's happening about funding for 2025 to 2026, because it would be such a shame if all the work that has been just for particular times and particular funding doesn't actually continue. Safer streets was one in particular I wanted to ask about, and you've answered me that. But that I think that there are other places in EFDC which would benefit from safer streets in my own ward. Fly tipping, again, but that is only from January 2025 for 17 weeks as part of SCRAP. Is that continuing? Sorry, do you want me to do question by question or the whole list?
If you like to carry on.
The Minerva one, I'm quite interested in that Ongar was a shared of the 10,000 funding, and I'd be really interested to know the breakdown for each of the areas, because obviously Ongar is probably considered a smaller area than the other two mentioned. But as a relatively new councillor, I was not aware of the self-defence for females in Ongar, or about the sexual harassment bystanding training and who that was for, and where the safe spaces are in Ongar, and availability about online training on domestic abuse. Now, that, as I wasn't a councillor until May, I didn't hear about it in the community, and that's something that perhaps could be addressed in the future to make sure that there is wider publicity about these things so that you get a better attendance for some of those things. The next one on domestic abuse starter kits, which obviously is a very good idea, but has there been a review about are those the most required needs? For example, a toaster? I'm just querying these things if people are literally what they're standing up in. I was in a similar experience, not from domestic abuse, but when our house burnt down, we literally had what we were standing up in. Broadcast Junior. Are there plans to repeat that elsewhere in EFDC? Because that is such an important thing, getting into schools, and similarly with the secondary school roadshows. And I'm wondering whether you have actually got local volunteers and people working with youth who can actually help on that, so that it takes away some of the cost implications. And then I also wanted to ask about the Healthy Youth Zone, how well that was received. I see that was a pilot scheme starting in January this year, and what the intentions are moving forward, and what again about volunteers. And then lastly, I think it's lastly, the police situation. Operation Pineapple, Operation Marilyn, Operation Wilderness, Operation Roundabout, Operation Stronghold, and Operation Brazil, excellent. But what about Operation Marilyn? Are businesses signing up to it? And what's the ongoing situation? What's the period of operation for the Operation Pineapple? Is Operation Wilderness, is Ongar involved, and is that still ongoing? Operation Roundabout. What else? Where else in the district? For example, the rural areas and the lighter evenings, etc., where there's going to be more problems. Operation Stronghold. That was, I understood, was just a week. Is there another planned, and where will it be? And Operation Brazil, again, can there be more about DNA for rural equipment, because equipment is replaced, and it also it's not just that, it's vehicles, but it's also expensive 4x4s and things again. And again, what are the cost implications of these? Because these are such good works, and your budget was fairly slim last year, and I'd be really interested to know going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dadd.
So I'm going to whiz through and then I'll do a full response, especially for the questions around Op Minerva, because that was last year and it sort of have a look. So the fly tipping project, we've got permission from the PFCC to extend that later with the patrols. We've linked it into the Essex Scrap It campaign, and also I think just 2 weeks ago we've had a meeting with Brentwood Council about some joint work around the Navestock area and so on, and actually they're looking at us as the peers in this and taking ideas from there. There's also some opportunities with joint work with neighbouring London boroughs there as well, and some quite interesting or exciting opportunities. So that will continue. It's not going to stop. One of the things that you mentioned, the police operation, which one was it? Sorry, roundabout around in the City of London. As part of the fly tipping project, we did some training with council officers, police, Brentwood council officers, and City of London Rangers about, and everyone who's working on fly tipping, understanding each other's powers. It goes very much to Councillor Nowecki's question about who's got this power, who's got that. And sometimes there can be, why aren't you doing this and why aren't you doing that? So there was a full day's training with Mallard Consultancy around what are each other's powers. I've strongly recommended to the PFCC's office that that training is expanded to North and other parts of Essex, because I think it would be value across Essex, not just in the West. If I can send you some details about Minerva, if that's all right, because I'll do that one. The DA starter kits, quite often when domestic abuse victims are placed in locations like Norway House, you're expected to supply your own goods, and they're coming with literally perhaps the clothes in a small suitcase. So we tailor, our domestic abuse support officer tailors the pack to what that family needs at that time. I'm really proud of that project, and I can say quite personally that Epping Forest's support of domestic abuse victims is second to none in Essex. And I think there's a lot of work across teams to make sure that we're doing what we can. Broadcast Junior, we have approved some further funding. I'll let you know again what schools that has, because we can't do the whole of the district, but there was, at the meeting last week, we definitely approved some more schools. I think we're going back into some of the schools at Oakwood Hill and other areas. A Healthy Youth Zone, which is in the Children's Centre at Ninefields, that's very much our health partners, because the youth club is going to move to the train carriage at Upshire. We had some funding for youth engagement workers to carry on the project. So that's been picked up actually by Children's Centre colleagues and health colleagues. They're running. We've given the support for 3 months to look at the need and what can be done there, so that it's a bit like that children can come. While they come, we can support their parents. They've got the right people there and do it. So that's it is very much a pilot. Can they get the families there? Can they identify the needs so that they can get further funding? That one. And Operation Stronghold was you. Good.
So you mentioned a large number of, again, the illustrious names operations. Stronghold does sound better than Pineapple, I might add. So look, a point of reassurance. We will generate an operation when we're reacting or proactively targeting a problem, I suppose is the best way to describe it. It allows us to measure performance and see if the problem goes away or if it persists. In some cases, for example, if we were to have an increase in burglary in an area, we might stand an operation up, the problem goes away and it's taken off. The operations that we have mentioned that are in the pack are operations that are ongoing and will continue to take place even past this point into the new fiscal. From an Essex Police standpoint, if there is an antisocial behaviour problem in Debden, we'll keep running Operation Pineapple. There will be patrols and it will be tasked under that. Operation Marilyn we've spoken about, which is retail crime, very much that's still ongoing. Operation Wilderness and our response to off-road vehicles, again, that will continue, but it will be focused on when we start seeing an issue, then we'll pop the operation up. It might be particularly during the summer months. We'll look to target and deal with that. the quad bikes that you saw there, which were obviously brung over and part of the operation, which was a pilot that I created to target off-road vehicle nuisance in my last district. And again, that's where that link comes in from. And again, from my own contacts with that, if we need the support for an off-road vehicle team, or we can get some funding, which again, with our support from the council, we usually can. If we need that as a resource for whatever it might be that we're dealing with, then we will. But simply put, the operations that are mentioned now aren't just, this is what we've done and that's the end of it. They will continue from an Essex Police standpoint. But secondly, there will be other new developing issues that may well happen in the next 12 months, and then new operations you might see in the next report as to what we've done. So as a point of reassurance, the work will continue where it needs to, and particularly for those, absolutely.
Can I just bring in Melissa, who's able to update and not Minerva?
Please do.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Dadd. Just to pick up on the Minerva points, firstly, the name is an Essex-wide initiative, so I don't know where the name came from. It wasn't us that specifically chose it in Epping Forest, so it is Essex-wide. Funding split, so we had £10,000. This was from October 2023 to March 2024, so we only had a period of 6 months to spend it. However, it was split across all three of the areas fairly, so no area got more than the other. It was split across the three areas fairly. In terms of, I note your feedback on not knowing about any of the projects, and we do take that on board. We did do press release. We visited all businesses in the areas, and put up our leaflets for advertising our different events. We did community safety days, and we worked with community champions to get those messages out. But I welcome any ideas of how we could work better to get those messages to the community for future events. With the self-defence sessions J9 and the active bystander training, that was available to any member of the public as well as businesses. For J9, we did a bespoke business training for all businesses across the three areas for signs to look out for domestic abuse. So it was open to everyone. In Ongar, specifically, the self-defence was really well attended, as was Loughton as well. So that was really, really positive. In terms of safe spaces, so we worked with national organisation Hestia. They have a campaign already which works with banks and pharmacies promoting safe spaces. So if someone feels unsafe or a victim of domestic abuse, that they can attend these establishments to get some support. We trained 2 of our officers up to go into the establishments to do kind of test purchasing, a bit of a strong word, but going in to make sure that they were given the right support. They only do it with pharmacies and banks, so we recognise that it needs to be open to more businesses. So what we worked on was online safe spaces. So for organisations and businesses that have website, creating an online safe space that goes through to signpost to organisations that can help and support victims or people that feel particularly unsafe. So that's kind of been over. Hopefully that answers your questions, but happy to follow up anything else.
Very quickly, does that mean that, that the pharmacies in Ongar have a notice saying this is a safe space, or how do you advertise?
So we did approach the pharmacy in Ongar. Not all pharmacies do have the capacity to become a safe space if they haven't got a safe room for victims to go to. So currently our only pharmacies within those areas are within Loughton that are safe spaces. But we did approach them. We worked with the organisation Hestia to see how we can kind of create that safe space.
Can I just thank you very much for the answers, and I would like to actually come back to you, Mandy, about getting involved with volunteers in Ongar, on the youth side in particular, if I may.
In terms of
helping to get volunteers involved on the youth side, if that would help, if that's what you like.
Sorry, Carol.
Councillor Dawes, I think perhaps if I can have a meeting with you and Vanessa Gayton from our communities team, who works very much on the community champions and the volunteering side. So perhaps if we can, I'll send you my contact details and I'll set up a meeting with Vanessa.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you. Yes, my question was on Broadcast Junior as well. It looks a very valuable project from the responses on page 19. I thought this was the first one you've done, but I got the impression from your answer to Councillor Dowd you've done other ones in the past. So I'd be quite interested to know which schools have had it and which will be having it. But I also wonder, is it just one workshop that pupils have, or is it over a series of time?
It's one performance, but one of the things that feedback we've had from the PFCC, and this come from a Safer Streets meeting, was what they'd like us to do is actually to get the theatre company to go back into the school about 3 months' time afterwards and do some targeted workshops to actually assess the benefit. Have they remembered what they've seen 3 months ago? What are the additionality, and speak to the teachers? So we're just doing our first pilot of that work, aren't we, for the Oakwood Hill schools? Sorry, I keep looking to Vanessa, it's for Melissa. So yeah, it is normally one performance. We haven't done all the schools. It's been probably safer streets areas, really, it's been targeted, but I will try and get a list for you of what schools were done and what ones are planned.
Councillor Nuruki.
Thank you, Chair. I was, well, first of all, just to say I'm glad to hear that we have safe spaces in Loughton for victims of domestic violence, which is fantastic. I just wondered, are we promoting these safe spaces, or are they kept discreet? And furthermore, I think when I was reading the report, I actually wondered as well how we get the names of the operations that we're doing, targeting local issues. I think some of the names are very colourful. I like pineapple, by the way. So my question there is, what is the challenges? What challenges has the CSP faced in the past year, and how did they overcome this?
I think there's a real challenge around capacity. I would say that the key partners are the council and the police driving a lot of these initiatives. I don't think that Epping Forest Community Safety Partnership will be as strong as it is without our communities department as well, Vanessa Gayton's team and Fab's team, because they're delivering the old Safe Stay and Well events, and a lot of our community champions work. Funding, we're going to see further funding restrictions this year. We've just been advised that we're losing further. I think it's every CSP in Essex is losing 30% of their grant from the PFCC because, and it's the cost of completing domestic homicide reviews, because they're done centrally in Essex, and the volume of reviews and the complexity of them has gone up so much that we've got to find some more money to do that. I should have mentioned the fire service, Essex Fire and Rescue. They are becoming a much more active player on the community side, and actually got a list from the station commander for the district with all the things they're doing at the moment. I think honestly it's capacity, because Melissa's doing that as well as being an antisocial behaviour team manager and managing antisocial behaviour complaints. I'm the safeguarding lead, I'm the community safety manager, but I'm also got a few other hats with CCTV, and the same with the police. You know, you're trying to do things and you're getting pulled away. So I think we're looked on as a very strong community safety partnership in this area, but I think that's because we're all quite passionate and we can see the value. I think it's keeping that passion going and keeping the momentum going. And I would say probably the last 2 years has been some of our best work really with the funding and what we're delivering. And I echo you with the Oakwood Hill is probably a model project, and we should do a bit of evaluation of why that's been so good and what's worked there. But it's just trying that challenge of doing the bits you love, like, you know, I'm very passionate about supporting domestic abuse victims, but also doing your day job and not being, and having the chance to be, not being you're being reactive all the time, and you don't get that chance to plan things and do things how you really would like to do them.
Thank you. I believe that is all of the questions. So I again just take the opportunity to thank you very much for all of the time and effort that is put into the Community Safety Partnership, and just thank you for bringing this to our attention this evening, and I believe all members will note its contents. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Dadd.
I'm sorry, I've got a question on the restricted.
Okay, no problem at all. Yeah, so I will officially close the meeting and then we'll go into private session. So thank you all very much for your engagement, as is the last meeting of the community scrutiny this year. I'd particularly like to thank my Vice Chair, Councillor Jeannie Lee, Laura from Democratic Services for all of your help this year, all of the officers that have had such an engagement and bringing us some great reports to scrutiny, and particularly to all of the members, cabinet members that have attended, and councillors that have raised questions. I've very much enjoyed being chairman this year. Thank you very much.
And you've done a wonderful job.
You've just got to confirm that the committee are happy to go into private session.
Are members happy to go into private session? Yeah. Okay.
Right, so do you want me to stop the meeting and do you want me to stop Teams?
No, you don't need to stop Teams.
Don't stop
stop the webcast.